are delighted to collaborate with St. Fagans, learning about our past in a practical, explorative way.
We left our path Bedwen, and in the words of St. Fagans, we would like to say to you, don't just visit history, be part of it. That's exactly what we have done, and now we would like to share our journey with you.
Our project focus was farming, wealth and poverty in the 17th and 1800s. We went on a journey back in time to find out what life was like back then.
We asked our friends in St. Fagans to help us with our quest, and they suggested we research what it would have been like to live in the two buildings, Kenixton Farmhouse and the Water Cottage.
Our challenge was to compare and contrast what it was like to live there, and this is what we found. Croeso I Kenixton Farmhouse, known as the Blood Red Farmhouse. This building has been at St. Fagans for over 50 years now, and it is a typical home of a wealthy landowner from the period. The farmhouse was bought from Llangennith in the Gower. The oldest part is from about 1610, with other parts added later in the 17th century, and the final part added in the mid-18th century, probably around 1750. The house is famous for its red colour, a deep red, mixed originally with ox blood and wine, and thought to ward off witches, just like the carved figures inside the front door. Another theory is that it simply showed that the family were rich enough to afford this type of colouring.
Just here outside the front door is a small stone structure, just large enough for a goose. The goose acted as an earlier form as a burglar alarm, warning the family if anyone was outside.
Inside can be seen an example of a bed or a covered bed where the maid of the house would sleep, typical of houses in the Gower at this period. Also, metal hooks above the fire were used to hang huge joints of bacon.
The main living room or kitchen is an addition, dating from around 1680, as is the wooden staircase and sleeping area above it.
Notice the intricate thatch weave for the roof, which was very expensive at the time and typical of a wealthy family's home. The thatch would provide good insulation and protection against the weather.
The walls of the dining room, originally the only ground floor room, are painted with decorations. This was before we had wallpaper, and did you know that this room was used as the interior of Captain Blaby's cottage in the filming of BBC's drama series Paul Dark?
There was also a separate dairy room where you would have the butter churn. There are also some outbuildings where, for example, the animals were kept. The stable boy would sleep on the platform with the animals. At the back of the building is the vegetable garden, where a range of vegetables and herbs would be grown for the kitchen.
They also kept bees to produce their own honey.
These are the toilets, which were a typical feature of a wealthy family's home at the time. You'll notice that there are two toilets side by side, and the waste would have to be emptied daily by the staff.
There is also an apple orchard in the garden, and the apples would be used in the kitchen and to make cider. The rotten apples would be used to feed the pigs.
Croeso I Water Cottage. This building originates from Talioris in Carmarthenshire. The cottage was built around 1770. The people who lived here would have been poor farm labourers who rented the cottage from the wealthy farm owners. This cottage is built of clay or mud, known locally as clog. As the clay was dug on the site and mixed with straw, earth and small stones, and then laid in layers which had to be allowed to dry for several days before the next one could be added.
Unlike the expensive thatch roof on Kenixton, this roof is made from wattle, gorse and some straw. All the materials the family would gather from around them. This home would be much colder and damper than Kenixton Farmhouse.
Why is so important to this family?
Well, if you live in a one-room house like this, you needed a fire for heat, and you also needed a fire on which to cook. And all the cooking is done on the fire. They usually ate cawl, like a type of stew. So although the house is very, very dark, the lady of the house working here would have had some light. And they would have used peat, which they found in the land around the house.
Please can you tell me how the building was made?
Now the people here, they didn't have much money. They couldn't afford stones to build a stone house, and they couldn't afford wood to build a wooden structure. But on their land there was lots of clay and very, very small stones. And they would mix the small stones and the clay and straw. Straw was very important. And then they would put a layer of this, what we call clom, down, let it dry, and then build another layer on top and on top. And eventually the wall is built. But to keep out the rainwater, they would line it put lime on it to waterproof it.
The table was also a practical piece, being long and narrow to provide more living space and fitted with deep drawers for storage. Candles were very expensive in those days, so the family would make candles out of sheep fat.
In the sleeping area is a post bed. The post would have originally been used to hang sacking in order to keep the warmth in at night. People used to sleep sitting up to try and stop breathing in smoke from the fire.
Outside is a small stone pigsty with a dove loft above, with a stone-tiled roof. These animals would provide important nutrition for the family. They would say the only part of the pig you couldn't eat is the squeal.
The family would also grow their own vegetables and herbs and would be self-sufficient.
As part of our project, we decided to make scale models of the farmhouse and the cottage.
We had to apply our numeracy skills to make floor plans.
We calculated the perimeter of each house and the area of each room.
For the cottage, we used mud rock and tried to create some of the effects, like traditional clump.
We also used natural materials to try and show the thatched roof. You can see this is a much poorer dwelling than the farmhouse. This is the home of a farm labour. For the farmhouse we used natural dye and researched that Oxford was used to colour walls, but only rich farm owners would use this luxury.
As you can see, the scale of this building is much grander than the cottage.
We also looked at traditional clothing to see what they used to wear. We also created peg dolls.
We had to go at our own traditional weaving patterns.
We made our own mini looms.
And we made a giant one for class display.
We hope you have enjoyed our journey back in time to look at the very different lives between the rich and the poor in the 17th and 18th century farming in Wales. Thank you for watching. Diolch am fawr! Hwyl fawr!